Almighty God, as we have come together to begin our meeting of the Assembly, we humbly beseech you to grant to all our members the light and guidance of your Holy Spirit, that we may wisely take counsel together and come to such decisions as shall promote your glory and the well-being of our citizens in this our land, so that the peace and happiness, truth and justice may be enjoyed by all people. Grant this for the sake of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Oath of allegiance of a new member, announcements by the presiding officer, assembly bills sent back from cabinet, assembly laws brought back from parliament, petitions, papers, presentation of reports from dispute resolution commissions and select committees, chief secretary's question, questions to secretaries, questions for oral answer.
Assemblyman Tiana Winchester.
Question number 1 to the Secretary of Health, Wellness and Social Protection, Councillor Kiman Soman.
Councillor Kiman Soman.
The hospital has coverage that is required via medical legal requirements, whereas members who engage in illegal healthcare practice or malpractice, the investigation is conducted by the TRHA, and the practitioner or healthcare provider would be dealt with accordingly. Thank you.
Assemblyman Emanuela Trim.
To the Secretary of Infrastructure, Quarries and Environment, Assemblyman Anthurium Lewis.
Assemblyman Anthurium Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. As it relates to the recently constructed road at Neville's Trace, Concordia, can the Secretary please indicate if public consultation was done with the residents and its environs before executing the project? Thank you for your question. In our division, we recognize the importance of public engagement in the planning and decision-making processes for infrastructure projects. We continue to take several steps to ensure that community voices are heard and considered. We hold regular public forums and consultations where community members can share their feedback, concerns, and suggestions regarding proposed projects. These sessions are advertised through various channels to ensure broad participation. We utilize surveys and feedback forms, both online and offline, to gather input from residents about specific infrastructure plans. This helps us to understand the needs and priorities of the community. We engage with local stakeholders, including community leaders, businesses, and advocacy groups, to discuss infrastructure needs and gather diverse perspectives. Our division maintains an informative website and active social media presence where we share project updates, timelines, and opportunities for public input. We encourage residents to stay informed and participate in discussions. By incorporating public inputs into our planning processes, we aim to create infrastructure that meets the needs of all Tobagonians and enhances the quality of life in our communities. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the Assembly on definite matters of urgent public importance. Statements by secretaries or assistant secretaries.
Councillor Soman.
Madam Presiding Officer, honorable members of this Assembly, to the public gallery and those listening online, happy International Women's Day. I stand here today as a proud member of this august chamber and this executive to assure the women of Tobago that much is on the horizon to erase the false notion or narrative that's being said about this administration. We have partnered with local NGOs in Tobago to bring the advanced and reliable support to help negate the menstrual challenges our young women face. Guardian newspaper reported in 2023 that one of our schools in Port of Spain faced plumbing issues because many girls didn't have access to feminine products. They were using cloth for sanitary pads, flushing it down, resulting in clogged systems. Madam Presiding Officer, we are aware that primary schools do not have the budget for menstrual health. But Madam Presiding Officer, this administration is also aware that some primary schools in Tobago are already catering for the needs of girls with menstrual health hygiene. Madam Presiding Officer, we have chosen to bring this motion not as a response to issues out there, but as an assurance to the young girls that yes, this administration hears their cry, and to the women's group, yes, we know of the challenges and things have been done, and it will continue to be unfold in this favor of eradicating period poverty among the young women and girls of Tobago. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Personal explanations, introduction of bills, motions relating to the business or sittings of the Assembly, and moved by a secretary or assistant secretary. Public business.
Assistant Secretary for Health, Wellness, Social Protection, you are now invited to move your motion.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Allow me to take this opportunity to extend greetings to all members gathered here today. International Women's Day was celebrated on the 8th of March. However, today is the 13th. It has come to my understanding that in some quarters, it is being celebrated for the entire month. So allow me to extend greetings to all of my colleagues around this horseshoe, those in the public gallery, and those via live who are celebrating International Women's Day. Madam Presiding Officer, I seek leave, according to Standing Order 42.7, to read extracts of my presentation.
Leave is granted.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Her health, her right, closing the gaps in healthcare for women and girls in Tobago. Whereas International Women's Day highlights the right to quality healthcare for all women and girls, whereas gaps persist in Tobago's healthcare services, particularly in menstrual health, maternal care, reproductive health, mental health, and accessibility, whereas challenges such as period poverty, inadequate postpartum support, limited contraception access, and insufficient mental health resources hinder women's well-being, be it resolved that this Assembly acknowledges the urgency of addressing these gaps and commits to advocating for policies that prioritize women's health. Be it further resolved that this Assembly agrees to the creation of a comprehensive women's health action plan to provide free or subsidized menstrual products, strengthen menstrual health education, expand postpartum and maternal health care services, improve access to contraception and sexual health services, increase mental health resources for women and girls, and strengthen rural healthcare infrastructure to ensure equitable access. And be it further resolved that this Assembly reaffirms its commitment to making women's healthcare a priority. Madam Presiding Officer, today we stand at a pivotal moment in history, one where the healthcare of women and girls on this little island will finally be prioritized under this administration. As a THA executive, we recognize that period poverty is in fact an issue and one that deserves our utmost attention. It is our responsibility as elected officials to ensure that no woman or girl is deprived of the products that she needs to lead a decent life. This is her right. We are talking about human rights. Madam Presiding Officer, period poverty is not merely a standalone issue. It is a reflection of poverty itself. This is why it is important to this administration. This aligns directly with key sustainable development goals, particularly SDG 1, no poverty, SDG 2, gender equality, and SDG 3, health and well-being, which will be further pivoted by my colleagues on this side of the August chamber. Madam Presiding Officer, when we're discussing period poverty, we need to take into consideration education. In a joint select committee dated December 8th, 2023, member for Tobago West stated, and I quote, "And in this day and age, you still have children and grown women using old t-shirt sleeves, cutting the sleeves of the t-shirts and using it as pads and keeping a plastic bag in your handbag and washing it to use again. Public education is a really important situation here." End quote. I cannot agree more. By educating girls as early as Standard 3 about menstruation, proper product usage, and biological processes, we can break the generational curse of misinformation that have been passed down by women gone before us who unfortunately did not know better. We also need to talk about the fact that period products are still, or period in general, is still a taboo subject in our society. A survey conducted by the Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross found that 49% of the boys interviewed stated or described the period as, quote, unnatural, stink, or disgusting, end quote. This contributes to the harm and shame that some women and girls feel, which is why many of them don't speak up, rooted in misunderstanding.
Assistant Secretary, you have 2 minutes remaining of speaking time.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. These values are rooted in misogyny and patriarchal traditions that are ruining our women and girls. As I wrap up, we need to take into consideration that in this island, we have a serious concern as it pertains to utilities. A survey found that 83.8% of respondents surveyed here on this island are still reliant on public piped dwelling. We also need to take into consideration that there are some people who are still reliant on latrines. Madam Presiding Officer, when clean water is unavailable and sanitation is unavailable, women are unable to properly wash their menstrual products, leading to serious health risk. Madam Presiding Officer, I stand before you today to raise a critical issue that affects the lives of countless women here on the island, and that is period poverty. It is our responsibility as the THA executive to ensure that all of our women and girls have access to health care. I beg to move this motion standing in my name.
Honorable members, the question proposed is, whereas International Women's Day highlights the right to quality healthcare for all women and girls, whereas gaps persist in Tobago's healthcare services, particularly in menstrual health, maternal care, reproductive health, mental health, and accessibility, whereas challenges such as period poverty, inadequate postpartum support, limited contraception access, and insufficient mental health resources hinder women's well-being, be it further resolved that this Assembly acknowledges the urgency of addressing these gaps and commits to advocating for policies that prioritizes women's health. Be it further resolved that this Assembly agrees to the creation of a comprehensive women's health action plan to provide free or subsidized menstrual products, strengthen menstrual health education, expand postpartum and maternal health care services, improve access to contraception and sexual health services, increase mental health resources for women and girls, and strengthen rural health care infrastructure to ensure equitable access. And be it further resolved that this Assembly reaffirms its commitment to making women's health care a priority in Tobago. Minority Leader Joel Green, Dial Spring, member for Dial Spring WIM, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I stand seeking leave to use Standing Order 42-7.
Leave is granted.
To every woman in the gallery, online, and to the dear women of Darrell Spring WIM, I wish you an empowered International Women's Day and an empowered Women's History Month. Madam Presiding Officer, esteemed members of the House, as the head of the minority bench, let the record show that we have come here today as independent assemblymen and that I have lifted the whip on this motion. Give a woman a fish and you feed her and her family for one day. Teach that woman to fish, and you feed her and generations to come. The findings of a 2024 study by Dr. Rambokas has substantiated that period poverty does indeed exist in Trinidad and Tobago. Findings that shed a very accurate yet very depressing outlook on the financial status of women of Tobago. It is my firm belief that if a woman cannot afford feminine products, that there are a great many other things that she also cannot afford. Just last year, the United Nations theme was Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress. This year, their theme is, and I quote, for all women and girls, rights, equality, empowerment. However, this hamper drive, poorly disguised as a motion brought by my learned colleague, the member for Bethesda Lekoto, offers women a beggar's portion on this International Women's Day, not empowerment. This hamper drive motion seeks to offer half-baked solutions to the financial inequity that they have created and are perpetuating. Financial inequities that are now causing strain to the purses of every woman in here as we grapple with issues of the uterus and crippling poverty, as Dr. Rambokas' study identified. But I put it to you, without any fear of contradiction, that this is an attempt to hide their gross, repeated annual failure. Failure to bring financial equity, parity, and equality to the women of Tobago through comprehensive policies that ensure financial freedom. Let me categorically state.
Minority Leader, you have 2 minutes of speaking time remaining.
Thank you. But I put it to you without fear of contradiction that they are hiding their gross annual failure, and we can have no gender equality without financial inclusion and financial freedom for all. In 2024, the THA was allocated $2.558 billion, a budgetary allocation that, according to them, does not accurately reflect Tobago's 5.1% of the national population and gives nothing close to a figure proposed by the Dispute Resolution Committee. With a shortfall of over $1 billion, how will they pay for this hamper drive? Is it a case of bring drinks, somebody gonna pay?
Assemblyman Anturiam Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I rise on a point of clarification. The member is going on and on about inequality in finances, right? And this is a motion about period poverty. But outside of that, so we are looking now at the salaries of women in Trinidad and Tobago. If she simply did a Google search, she would know that all salaries in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago are published in the public sector and are made known to all individuals. So the only cases in which it will differ is if it has modifications, in which persons have special qualifications or based off of merit. So is the member so against the human rights of women in Tobago that she is willing to come here and bring baseless claims against this motion?
Assemblyman, thank you for your contribution. Minority Leader, you may continue.
Thank you for your question. But you seem not to be understanding that economic and financial freedom does not come from a salary alone. Come on, lady, come on. The women of Tobago don't want more charity. We are not begging. We want equal pay. We want jobs commensurate with our qualifications. We want financial empowerment, not to escape period poverty. We're not asking for a raise in pay, but we're asking for
Minority
financial
Council,
equality.
Minority Leader, you have no more speaking time remaining.
Madam Presiding Officer, I request for additional speaking time of 2 minutes be granted to the Minority Leader.
Honorable members, the question put is that additional speaking time of 2 minutes be given to the Minority Leader to continue her presentation. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say nay. The ayes have it. Member, you may continue.
It must be the tintinnabulation of an election bell I am hearing. You all hearing that? Yes. Because when I was reading this motion, it left me with no doubt that this is an election year. Because if passed, this will be the most massive state-funded hamper drive that the electorate of Tobago has ever seen. Madam Presiding Officer, the motion speaks to the intent of this group over here to offer the women of Tobago hamper drives filled with tampon, panty shields, pads, menstrual cups, liners, and condoms. When what we, the women of Tobago, really want is legislated equal pay, legislation to discourage and prevent gender prejudice in hiring practices, so that we can get jobs commensurate with our qualifications. Hurry bird na build goodness, and this motion is more handiwork from a gaggle of hurry birds. Handiwork intended to continue the humiliation of the women of Tobago that they started since the occupation of these hallowed halls. I strongly encourage the Assemblymen to take a page out of our powerful leader in the Caribbean, Mia Mottley, Prime Minister of Barbados, as she signed an MOU with a biotech firm to help with research in Barbados. We need more targeted research to be conducted into the issues of the uterus so that we can experience period-free menstruation and menopause while living financially empowered lives. I heard that the old adage is a healthy labor force is a productive labor force. But what about instituting policies such as paid menstrual
Minority
leave?
Leader, your time has expired. Chief Secretary Anturium Lewis, member for Palatavir, Lansfommy Speyside, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, for the ability to speak in this honorable House. A pleasant morning is extended to you, my fellow honorable members, and viewers of the public gallery. I seek leave as Standing Order 42.7 to read extracts from my presentation.
Leave is granted.
This motion is about basic human rights. The UN Sustainable Development Goals call for universal access to sexual and reproductive healthcare services by 2030. In accordance with these goals, the THA has developed 11 pillars aimed at ensuring that Tobago is on path to becoming the greatest little island on the planet. Pillars 5, 8, and 9 discuss having a modern, scientific, and efficient healthcare sector, protection and caring for the most vulnerable, and striving for a population that is united, peaceful, safe, and secure, which includes everything that today's motion entails. To list a few initiatives developed in pursuit of these goals, we have the Crossroad Programs in School, Health and Family Life Education Program, and our Program for Adolescent Mothers. These programs focus on educating both males and females about their bodies, building awareness to social crises, risk reduction, and recuperation through methods like intensive therapeutic counseling. Here in Tobago, we can boast of having more than enough healthcare centers that are well equipped in both human and material resources throughout the island for all to access. Now tracing back to the SDGs, our aim is to ensure that the 2030 deadline is met and that all healthcare gaps are truly closed. As such, Madam Presiding Officer, in an effort to combat period poverty, we propose that menstrual cups of different sizes be made available to every female between the ages of 9 to 50, as it is not only cost-effective due to its reusability, but also safe and durable, as one menstrual cup can last up to 10 years. We acknowledge our cultural preferences and that it will take time to make these changes, so we plan through robust public education by the Information Division to educate Tobagonians on the importance and value of acquiring and using the menstrual cup. This viable idea would ensure that no female lacks access to menstrual products while eliminating the need and high costs of buying disposable hygiene products every month. This program would be targeted especially towards students and those in the lower class who are most affected financially. The late Maya Angelou said, and I quote, "If you don't like something, change it. And if you can't change it, change your attitude." Hence the reason we are prepared to do both. The organization Crown Her TT shared that in a scientific study involving a total of 504 women, 68.5% of women reported that they have missed work for approximately 3 days per month due to menstrual-related issues. This clearly highlights that the standard 14 days of sick leave per year is nowhere near sufficient for women. This ties to the issue we currently face with reduced productivity in the labor force. When women miss work, businesses lose productivity. When girls miss school, their education suffers, limiting their future opportunities and contributions to our economy. If immediate action is not taken, we run the risk of employers choosing to hire more men over women.
Chief Secretary, you have 2 minutes of speaking time remaining.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Men over women, because men are less likely to take.
Minority Leader.
I stand on a point of clarification and relevance. The member is going on and on.
Minority Leader,
Yes.
which standing order do you stand on?
The member is going on and on about hiring practices and people being able to get leave to stay home. I am looking at this motion, and I don't know if my glasses not helping me, but I ain't seeing anything here about leave. I see health care, I see postpartum, I see mental health. I don't see anything about HR practices. I don't see anything about leave for women to stay home. Is this something that they're introducing new? We would like to know where they're going with this, because it is becoming evident that they are just straying all
I am
over
on
the
my
place.
feet. Chief Secretary, please clarify your statements.
Clearly, the member does not understand the root cause of period poverty or the effects of it. However, I will continue since the attempt to distract me is not going to work. We cannot waste time. If 68.5% of women skip work due to their menstruation and 76.2% of women believe that period products aren't affordable, then obviously whatever the NGOs have been doing till now has not been effective, and they themselves are clearly incapable of doing it themselves or closing the gaps in women's health care. So while we welcome the concept of soliciting contributions from private sector partnerships, we cannot ignore the elephant in the room. This urgent matter requires the government's intervention and leadership, regardless of how you look at it. Just dropping it in the laps of non-governmental organizations will leave it for stagnation and delay, as we have seen thus far. Madam Presiding Officer, there are millions of dollars in international funding available to address issues like closing the gaps in women's health care and similar social issues. However, we must look at who is able to access this funding. Act 40 of 1996, Section 25(2)(c, explains that the THA has the capacity by law to access international funding. Therefore, sourcing these funds means that the expenditures made are off budget and no extra strain is placed on our already scarce budget allocation. On the other hand, most NGOs in Tobago run informally, not having audited financial statements, not holding elections on time, and not even adhering to their own constitutions. This poor management and governance makes it more difficult for them to access, well, any type of funding.
You have 2 minutes of speaking time. No. Your speaking time has expired.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to move that 2 minutes of additional speaking time is given to the member to finish her presentation.
Honorable members, the question put is that additional speaking time be given of 2 minutes for the member to finish her presentation. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say nay. The ayes have it. Chief Secretary, you may continue.
So again, I reiterate, due to the urgency of this issue, the quickest and most efficient way to close these gaps in women's health care is by allowing this administration to take lead in rectifying this issue. And Madam Presiding Officer, passing this motion is the first step. I thank you.
Minority Councillor Renee McPherson, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, esteemed members of this House, my fellow colleagues, members of this public gallery, and by extension, my friends, co-workers, and family who are virtually present, good morning. Madam Presiding Officer, first I seek leave that Standing Order 42.7 to read extract of my presentation. Thank you, Madam
Leave is granted.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I rise today not in opposition of the well-being of women and girls, but in opposition to this motion. As a mother, a sister, a co-worker, and the voice of countless women and girls on our island, blind, the disabled, who face daily struggles that is too often ignored, which despite its appealing motion, it fails to deliver real solutions for women and girls in Tobago. The government's efforts may come from a place of good intention. Good intentions alone do not guarantee effective solutions. This approach to tackling period poverty is short-term, unsustainable, and fails to address the root causes of this problem. I stand before this Honorable House to expose the gaps in this motion, to question the effectiveness, and to demand accountability. If we are serious about closing healthcare gaps for women and girls, then let us demand clear plans, real funding, and measurable outcomes starting from financial independence for women. Don't just address period poverty. Focus on broader policies that relieve poverty, such as financial support for low-income single women families, improve education on financial literacy, and access to better health care for women and girls. These are the underlying issues that contribute a domino effect on period poverty, and any other solution may only serve as a temporary sanitary period liner. We all want a healthcare system that serves everyone, one that is efficient, accessible, and properly funded. We all want to see women and girls given the care and resources that they deserve. However, what we do not want and will not support is a motion that is filled with vague promises, political showboating, and misallocated priorities. Madam Presiding Officer, the people of this country are tired of hearing beautifully crafted speeches and no real action. They are tired of policies that look good on paper but fail in the practice. They are tired of watching this government focus on political convenience issues while ignoring the real crisis plaguing our women and girls: lack of jobs, housing. This may seem like a small problem to come. It may seem a small problem to some. It may also seem like a small problem to my intelligent, naive friends on the other side. But this is a barrier that prevents too many of our women from living with dignity, equality, and full participation in society, in the workplace, sports, and just being a woman. As a mother with teenage girls, I myself struggle. I remember it just like yesterday. My daughter, exam time, right? And she's there concentrating on her exam, and bam, it came. And she cramps, headaches, and now she has to frustratingly think what next to do. No principal, nothing from principal, nothing from teacher, not even the examiner could help her. And she's frustratingly calling me to help her. And I now have to leave Scarborough to go to the east to help my daughter with painkillers in a different scenario. Couldn't this all be prevented if the school was equipped with sanitary pads and painkillers for female students who are attending school? Discussion has been met angrily, and what does the school say? Well, the government do not provide this for the school. What chances? Therefore, I welcome the chance to speak on this matter and stand here with a sense of frustration. A frustration that despite years of discussion and promises, the problem still exists. Madam Presiding Officer, let us not be fooled by this political extempo. If this government truly cares about women's health, stop passing feel-good motions and focus on real improvements. We are facing a real issue, and I fully support
Minority
the need
Councillor.
to address this.
You have 2 minutes of speaking time remaining.
Thank you, Madam. However, the government's approach, this current approach, is neither sustainable nor empowering at the end. Instead of short-term fixes, we need solutions that ensure long-term affordability, education, and economic empowerment for us women and girls. Focus on local production, reducing costs, and investing in better infrastructure. We can create a future where no one relies on temporary aid to manage their basic needs. We must strive for real, lasting change, not just quick fix or something we copied from some overseas country. Sustainable long-term solution is needed. It is not just about providing products. It is about ensuring that everyone, especially women in vulnerable communities, have access to resources and support they need consistently. Imagine a study that published in the Trinidad Guardian by Joel Julian, Medical Science Discovery Journal, surveyed 504 women between the ages of 18 to 48 in rural areas and found that 76% did not believe that period products were affordable. 51 struggled to maintain these products. 55 had to borrow. 51 resorted to using alternatives. And furthermore, as 68% of women reported missing from work. You miss work, sick leave, you don't get paid, lack of funding, no money, no salary. Madam Presiding Officer, is this motion simply designed to make headlines and Facebook, or to just distract us from a bigger failure towards women on this island? Let us stop talking about the issue and let us take the necessary steps to ensure that women and girls in Tobago live with dignity, free from the shame and hardship of period poverty and, by extension, poverty overall. It is time that this government move beyond words, and this motion feels like you're putting the cart before the horse, entertained by political
Minority
theater.
Councillor, your speaking time has expired.
Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to move that 2 minutes of additional speaking time be given to the member to finish her presentation.
Honorable members, the question put is that additional speaking time be given to the member of 2 minutes to finish her presentation. All in favor say aye. All against say nay. The ayes have it. Member, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. In conclusion, as we are entertained by this political, where is the opportunities? Where is the dignity? As our member even quoted from the renowned poet, Maya Angelou, let us also take note of that same renowned poet, Maya Angelou, which once said, I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Tobago women, we need to feel seen, heard, and valued. Even amid economic hardship, we are more likely to rise above those struggles. An action plan that speaks louder than words. So let's come better than that. Thank you, Madam.
Assemblyman Kiara Stewart, member for Belgarden, Glamorgan, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I would like to wish you all a happy, belated International Women's Day, and I thank you for allowing me to take part in this debate. Madam Presiding Officer, I seek leave at Standing Order 42.7 to read extracts of my presentation.
Leave is granted.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, we on the majority side of this Assembly are of the unwavering belief that this Assembly continues to make access to women's healthcare services a priority in Tobago. As my fellow colleague mentioned, menstruation continues to be a normal physiological phenomenon for all menstruators, but safety, accessibility, and equity remain elusive. There is a heavy veil of stigma, taboo, and shame stifling open discussion on the topic. Of these, period poverty is one of the most critical challenges we face in Tobago. Period poverty can be defined as the lack of access to menstrual products, education, hygiene facilities, and waste management. The UN Women Organization estimates that worldwide approximately 500 million women and girls have experienced period poverty. And a study done by the Medical Science and Discovery Journal in Trinidad and Tobago estimated that a woman will spend approximately $125,016 on menstrual products over her lifetime. Madam Presiding Officer, I'm seriously trying to understand how the minority bench of women can really sit there saying, they support women, but can't support the motion designed to support women during their periods. Make it make sense, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, they are talking about pads and tampons like a new Chanel bag. When women are bleeding and don't have the necessary products to deal with their blood, what are they supposed to do? Let me take the time to remind the minority again that eradicating period poverty is in keeping with the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals for all UN member states. Poverty, and by extension, period poverty, limits access to all women's healthcare services. But today, I will focus on postpartum care and mental health. Increasing access to postpartum services for mothers should be of the utmost importance to this Assembly. Postpartum depression, postpartum preeclampsia, and postpartum hemorrhage continue to be dismissed and underdiagnosed in our women. According to the National Institutes of Health in the US, 1 in 10 women is affected by postpartum depression after birth, and postpartum hemorrhage continues to be one of the leading causes.
Assemblyman, you have 2 minutes of speaking time remaining.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. And postpartum hemorrhage continues to be one of the leading causes of maternal mortality in women, especially Black women. Giving birth in itself is trauma to the body, and we need to start treating it as such. One can only imagine how these facts disproportionately affect impoverished women. Increasing access to services like counseling, placing emphasis on women who are at high risk for developing postpartum mental illnesses and other postpartum ailments, increase the chances of early detection and diagnosis. We all know mental health is often overlooked in our society. It is not taken as seriously as other physical ailments. The lack of means for hygienic management of menstruation can cause discomfort and psychological stress, adding to the shame and sometimes depression that women and girls experience because of menstruation-related taboos. Imagine going to an older family member and saying that you find it difficult to bond with your baby, or an overwhelming feeling of sadness, worry, or fatigue well after birth. Imagine what that response would look like. Consequently, establishing a system where postpartum supplies are distributed in our public health facilities, ensuring our mothers have what they need to take care of themselves at such a vulnerable time. Postpartum ailments, especially postpartum mental illnesses, are real and affect real women. Real women who may not have the resources or support system to deal with their menstrual or reproductive health. Real women who deserve more than the minority's redundant and dull excuses as to why they don't. Nonetheless, they are just as deserving of the support we can give if we approve this motion. So, in concluding, I urge the minority to truly consider and acknowledge the power they have as elected officials to help the women of Tobago and the women of their own constituents to deal with their health. I thank you.
Assemblyman Tiana Winchester, member for Roxborough Argyle, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I seek leave of Standing Order 42.7 to read extracts from my speech.
Leave is granted.
Good day, Madam Presiding Officer, honorable members, live audience, and audience in the gallery. Happy belated International Women's Day. As a proud young woman, I stand firm in my beliefs and my ability to shape my own future. Today is not just about celebrating how far we have come, but also about pushing forward with purpose. The strength of a woman is not measured by the impact that all her hardships in life have had on her. The strength of a woman is measured by the extent of her refusal to allow those hardships to dictate her and who she becomes. Today we are presented with a motion that on the surface appears commendable. However, a closer look reveals that it is both impractical and misguided. The assumption that government intervention is the only solution to women's healthcare challenges in Tobago is flawed. While gaps exist, must we rely solely on sweeping policies and increase government expenditure? Or can we instead explore more sustainable, community-driven, and economically viable approaches? Yes, period poverty is a serious issue, but does this mean we should immediately demand increased government spending without assessing feasibility? We must also acknowledge that VAT-free period products were introduced in 2016 according to the Committee on Human Rights, Equality, and Diversity. My opponents may argue that making period products free is a simple solution, but can Tobago actually afford this? According to the THA's fiscal 2024 budget, the Tobago House of Assembly operates within a constrained budget, managing multiple critical sectors such as healthcare, education, infrastructure, and disaster response. To implement free menstrual products for all menstruators in Tobago, let's break down the cost. The average menstruator spends $100 per month on period products. There is roughly 60,000 people in Tobago, half of that being women. Assuming Tobago's target group includes 25,000 menstruators, the annual cost would be $30 million. $30 million is a significant financial burden on the Tobago House of Assembly, which already operates within a constrained budget. Should we divert vital resources to cover the cost of providing free menstrual products when there are pressing healthcare demands, such as cancer treatment, emergency services, and maternal care? For context, in the fiscal 2024 budget, the THA highlighted the severe challenges it faces in maintaining essential services while grappling with limited resources. The budget allocation...
Madam Presiding Officer, I rise on a point of clarification. So it is clear that the member cannot debate as she heard my presentation, or maybe she does not have listening skills, because she heard my presentation and she has not spoken about or rebutted anything to do with the international funding that I spoke about, which is our right by law, the THA's right by law to access international funding. You are going on and on that we have no funding, but you have not addressed what I just said. I just gave you a resolution. Additionally, it is your colleagues and people from your party who are in central government who have a say on the amount of budget allocation that we get. And you are here saying
What? You can, it's your...
Chief Secretary, I am on my feet. Member, you may continue.
I would just like to add that these international fundings that you are talking about have criteria that we have to follow. I will now continue. The budget allocation for the healthcare sector in Tobago continues to fall short of meeting the growing demands of medical services. The THA has been focused on improving healthcare infrastructure and expanding services to meet the needs of the island's residents. However, the demands...
Assemblyman, you have 2 minutes of speaking time remaining.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. The demands are far greater than the financial resources available. As a result, the THA faces constant strain in providing quality health care to its citizens. Additionally, Tobago's limited revenue base is another factor that complicates the ability to fund new programs, especially non-essential ones like providing free menstrual products. According to the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Trinidad and Tobago, Tobago's economy heavily relies on transfers from the central government in Trinidad, which often results in financial constraints for the THA. So I urge you to wake up, because it is clear that you are sleeping. Do not be mistaken. I wholeheartedly stand by women and their struggles with period poverty, but I cannot stand by this motion, which seeks to squeeze water from a stone or milk a cow that's already run dry. Rather than relying on the government, let's explore more sustainable and community-driven solutions. Schools, for example, could initiate programs where teachers and students who are more fortunate donate menstrual products monthly, ensuring that students who are less fortunate have access. Additionally, non-governmental organizations and local businesses can establish menstrual product banks, as has been done in Trinidad. For example, Feminine TT, a non-profit...
Assemblyman, your speaking time has expired.
Minutes additional speaking time to complete her presentation.
Honorable members, the question put is that additional speaking time be given of 2 minutes so that the member can finish her presentation. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say nay. The ayes have it. Member, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. A non-profit organization focused on mental health launched the Safe Cycle project to establish menstrual product banks across various communities in Trinidad and Tobago. This initiative allows individuals and businesses to donate products, ensuring that they are distributed to those in need. The founder has emphasized that this initiative thrives on donations rather than government funding. Empowering local communities to take responsibility and show compassion for those in need is a far more sustainable approach. Real change does not always come from policies on paper. It comes from communities stepping up and supporting their own. Too often, we look to others for solution when the real power lies in our own hands. As the old folks say, one hand can't clap. We must come together, support each other, and take action to create opportunities rather than waiting on the government to do everything. Thank you.
Assemblyman Anna Marcel Codrington, member for Bagatelle, Bacalet, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I seek leave to stand on Standing Order 42.7 to read extracts from my speech. Oh, God.
Leave is granted.
Right. Thank you. Good morning to the members on my side. Greetings are also extended to my colleagues on the opposing side, honorable guests, and to you, my loyal listeners. Before I start my speech, as I sat listening to the minority leader's presentation or her paragraphs of insults, Madam Presiding Officer, allow me to remind the honorable minority leader where she sat last year at this time. Right, it seems like
Minority Council.
And in order 45, 4, 5, and 6 for the content of the member speeches. Let her be guided accordingly, please.
Member, please.
Insulting.
Member, please continue your speech.
thank you very much. Let me continue. Is it that she's missing her seat, that she has nothing but insults towards us? Anyways, moving on smartly. I will not... Hey. Huh. I wish to
Member, in this August House, you will conduct yourself as a proper young woman of Tobago. So while you are about to present your speech, you will do so with the utmost decorum that I know you have. You may continue.
Okay. I wish to start off this debate by highlighting the definition of health. It is not just the state of being free from illness or injury or compromised mental or physical condition. Health takes on a broader meaning when the social determinants of health are considered, which include economic stability, education, social and community context, health and healthcare, neighborhood and built environment. To my listeners, I will not be so unjust to say that men don't deserve to be healthy or looked out for. But let's be honest and factual. Women indeed have more unique health issues than men. So prioritizing women's health is not the issue here. It is the mental structure of my opponent. Instead of being on the opposing side, you should take a stand for and with me. My colleagues have already defined period poverty, and therefore, as I introduce the issues of social determinants of health, I will share how these factors exist in Tobago and how they nearly impact on the life of nearly 20,000 menstruating women and girls in Tobago. Poverty is at an all-time high, approaching 30%, which means that 1 in every 3 households find it difficult to meet essential needs for good health and well-being. Information on period are not fully accessible to young girls in primary schools because children are menstruating at
Member, you have 2 minutes of speaking time remaining.
Because children are menstruating at an earlier age than long ago. This takes some parents by surprise, and they have not prepared their girls adequately. We should not wait to hear about any bad situation resulting from period poverty to take action, to allow for dignity to be a part of experience of womanhood. While the government side will provide these products at all schools, it does not take away from parents' responsibility to provide. But as a government, we wish to ensure that our future women leaders are invested in from the cradle to the presidency. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, adopted by all United Nations members in 2015, created 17 World Sustainable Development Goals. These in which consist of SDG 1, poverty. SDG 1 aims to end poverty in all its forms everywhere. This includes period poverty. Its objectives include ensuring that the entire population, and especially the poorest and most vulnerable, have equal rights to economic resources, access to basic services, poverty and land control, natural resources and new technology. SDG 5, achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls.
Member, your speaking time has expired.
Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to move that 2 minutes of additional speaking time be given to the member to finish her presentation.
Honorable members, the question put is that additional speaking time be given of 2 minutes to the member so that she can finish her presentation. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say nay. The ayes have it. Member, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Gender equality is not only a fundamental human right, but a necessary foundation for a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world. SDG 3 aspires to ensure health and well-being for all, including a bold commitment to end the epidemics of AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, and other communicable diseases by 2030. The aim of these goals is peace and prosperity for people and the planet, while tackling climate change and working to preserve oceans and forests.
Minority Leader.
I stand on a point of clarification and relevance. She's talking about SDG goals, and that is wonderful. But I fail to understand where she's going with this. First, she said we need land. I'm reading this motion, and they have nothing in here asking for land, no money, no nothing. I think she needs to read this motion properly before she comes here to the House and come prepared for this motion and this debate.
Member, you may continue.
They are all interrelated. Access to land and finance builds wealth, which lifts persons out of poverty. Again, do you miss your position on this side of the horseshoe? Anyways.
Member, I caution you to have respect for everyone sitting around this horseshoe. You may continue.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. We do have these aligning policies. In closing, I would like to quote a line from Assemblyman Zoisha Hackett. We are all Tobagonians first, end quote. Yes, we understand the situation. I, as a growing woman, will take heed of your suffrage because I understand. I would like to say we are all growing women and growing women first. I thank you.
Assemblyman Jada Abraham, member for Lambo Lowlands, you may now join the debate.
Good morning, Madam Presiding Officer, public gallery, and to you, my fellow colleagues around this horseshoe. Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to stand on Standing Order 42.7 to read extracts of my speech.
Leave is granted.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I wish to express my views regarding the motion titled, Her Health, Her Right, Closing the Gaps in Healthcare for Women and Girls in Tobago. This motion is of considerable importance and contains multiple layers that warrants careful examination. This issue mustn't be overlooked during our discussion today. Before I proceed, I would like to extend my belated wishes for International Women's Day. This day is significant as it highlights the challenges faced by women and girls around the world. I would like to begin by sharing my perspective on the matter at hand. I firmly believe that women's health care must be prioritized in Trinidad and Tobago. However, we cannot operate without proper planning and procedures. It is interesting to note that women's health care is so important that the Tobago House of Assembly acknowledges the problems we face. So serious that policies are set into action to provide menstrual products. When are the plans being put into action? What are the plans of improving the education system when it comes to women's reproductive health? Instead, it sounds better to say unattainable things that we just cannot afford. I would recommend an idea I'm sure the majority would argue for, that we should start seeking women's health with education, to encourage our communities to initiate campaigns aimed at addressing period poverty and increasing awareness through education. We cannot play house and say all these utopic things without considering important factors like funding. This right here is the reasons why plans fail. No real actionable idea. Buy pads, stock school bathrooms. Are we to pump money that we do not have? When can we start with education? There is not enough education being done on women's health and not enough data showing women's issues in Trinidad and Tobago, especially in Tobago. I can count to the top of my head 10 people who are not aware of the familiar women's terms, familiar health terms like PCOS, endometriosis, or premenstrual syndrome, or symptoms during and after pregnancy that my lovely assemblyman of the opposition labeled postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis. Addressing these issues require more than financial investment. Meaningful solutions are needed for issues like these, Madam Presiding Officer. While there may be arguments for the elimination of costs in menstrual products, I simply cannot get behind this point. The funds that we get from menstrual products are the same funds that help us fund our economy.
You have 2 minutes of speaking time remaining.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Does it make it right to profit off of women's pains and sufferings? No, it will never be right. However, we must consider the economic context of Trinidad and Tobago, particularly Tobago. We are still in recovery from our last global pandemic, COVID-19. The Ministry of Finance released an article confirming on March 11, 2024, stating that Trinidad and Tobago is undergoing a sustained economic recovery. The article also says, based on these consultations, the IMF has underscored that Trinidad and Tobago's economic outlook is gaining momentum. For the first time in a decade, our economy is gradually increasing. By taking away the cost of products that have a high rate of sales, will only shatter our climb up the ladder of being the greatest little island in the world. In addition, we need to address and break a cultural issue in Trinidad and Tobago. There's an expectation for the government, is that they should support and give us handouts for everything while doing no labor. We expect to be provided with no return of labor, and that simply cannot do. We need to break these cultural norms here today in this country to see any sort of progress in our economy. We can stand here and compare ourselves to countries like Scotland or Sweden or any other country, but we cannot compare our economies. We need to remember that these countries we like to compare ourselves to are developed countries. We are more accurately considered to be a developing country according to United Department of State.
Your speaking time has expired.
Presiding Officer, I beg to move that the speaking time be extended by a further 2 minutes so that the member can complete her presentation.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that additional speaking time be given to the member of 2 minutes so that she can continue her presentation. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say nay. The ayes have it. Member, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Our budget is quite literally tight. We will have no legroom if we further with these initiatives that my wonderful colleagues around this great August chamber will try to protest for. It is very admirable, I do agree, but logic is being thrown into the rubbish bin in this argument. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot of changes as it pertains to healthcare for women. Current healthcare measures often reflect a male-centered perspective, which has led to outdated practices. For instance, tests like BMI were created from collected data from a European man in the 1800s, or measures set in place to detect when women unfortunately go into cardiac arrest. There should be changes, new policies, and laws set in place for these same issues. In my final words, we find ourselves at a crucial moment. I stand here as a woman today to call for meaningful change. I envision a future where every woman in this country has access to what she needs and thrives. However, we must recognize our position as a small nation with a delicate economy. Our journey must begin with education, and we must build from there. Taking thoughtful, measured steps is essential, as past policies have faltered because we have rushed for quick fixes. Let us be logical. While it may not be perfect, it could lead us to success. This is more than winning a debate and using fancy language. I am one of the youngest people here today in these chambers. Listen to the unbiased voice of the youth. Women's health is important and should be given attention, but let us start with education. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, and you all for listening to my speech.
Assemblyman Davina Nelson, member for Scarborough Mount Grace, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Before I commence my speech, the opposition has me a tad bit discombobulated. I think they are here, and I think they were supposed to oppose us, but instead they are some way opposing themselves. Madam Presiding Officer, we have one person saying that we, the government, should not provide free things. And on the other hand, she's saying that it should be provided for her child when a child needs it. Madam Presiding Officer, the minority leader is saying,
Presiding Officer, I stand in standing order 45, 4, 5, and 6, content of speeches. I would like the member to please excuse anything to do with woman from woman. You're speaking about a child, right? It could be a little insulting. Please be guided accordingly.
Member, you may continue your speech.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Let it be known that I was not attacking anyone's child. The member brought her business to the House.
Madam Presiding Officer, again, I stand in standing order 4, 5, and 6 in the content of the member's speeches. And again, I say,
Member,
please
I
tread
am on
lightly.
my feet. Thank you. Ladies, member, I am on my feet. For Signal Hill, I'm on my feet. In this house, we will respect each other. I have no problem with us arguing against and for, but we will do it properly and respectfully. And this goes for everyone who sits around this washroom. Member, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. We had the minority leader speaking to attacking poverty, but when my fellow member here spoke on other things that will attack poverty, she's asking for relevance. Madam Presiding Officer, they need to get it together. At this moment, I begin my speech. It is an honor to stand in the House, and I stand on the votes of the people of Scarborough Mount Grace.
Member, are you reading your speech?
Oh, no, sir.
Are you reading a speech?
It is an honor to stand in the House, and I stand on the votes of the people of Scarborough Mount Grace. I seek leave on Standing Order 42.7 to read extracts from my speech.
Leave is granted.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. International Women's Day is a moment to reflect on the progress we have made but it is also an opportunity to acknowledge the challenges that persist, especially in the realm of healthcare, women's healthcare. Madam Presiding Officer, we deserve a period party. We deserve privileged periods. This period party is no regular one. This is a party where all menstruators are obligated to attend. The perks, options. The options include, it's a party, early bird tickets to VVIP tickets or complimentary tickets. The point is that all menstruators will be able to choose the quality of experience that they desire. The early bird tickets are those who can pick a product and use that product throughout their entire duration of their period, right? The VVIP tickets are those that have the option to choose as many products from the liners, the tampons, the light day pads, the nighttime pads, variety. But Madam Presiding Officer, we particularly want to focus on those that require complimentary access to this period party. We should be able to afford them with a relief program whereby they are recognized and supplied with products on a monthly basis or 3 monthly basis necessary to experience their products with pride and dignity. From my experience as a science educator at the secondary level and through additional research at the primary level, menstruation is taught, or you are educated on it from Forms 4 and then Standards 4, right? Madam Presiding Officer, there is a lack. But before I explain this lack, I want to commend the significant strides of this administration, as the Honourable Member said, in the right directions and through partnerships with various educators like NGOs, registered nurses, guidance counselors, teachers, the Tobago Regional Health Authority, and many others, menstruators have been informed through various programs and seminars. I want to commend the work of those freelance advocates for menstruation rights. They may not be popular influencers, but they are doing the work. Madam Presiding Officer, here we, this administration, are moved to step in and lend a helping hand to support these people that are already doing the work.
Assemblyman, you have 2 minutes of speaking time remaining.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. There is a lack of menstrual education in this country, not just for women and girls, but for all. Firstly, we need to cut the euphemisms. Oh gosh, not tanti come, not is the time of the month, not tebeku as my granny does say. We need to be able to say with pride that we are menstruating. After all, it is a natural biological process. We need to educate menstruators about conditions that may affect their period. Anything and everything affects a woman's period. Stress, PCOS, endometriosis, eating disorders, thyroid diseases. We need to be able to educate menstruators about period disorders such as premenstrual syndrome, premenstrual dysphoric disorders, and symptoms that affect you, like anxiety, depression, panic attacks, lack of concentration. Why is it that a week before your period, you just can't function? Madam Presiding Officer, we need to educate the members of our society by large, so that they can offer a variety of products, so that they can help us with our proper sanitation facilities, hygiene. Thereby, business owners can expand their product offerings. Madam Presiding Officer, we need to educate our young men. This aids in breaking the taboo and the stigmas and provide holistic support not only in the homes, but in our workplace, at school. Madam Presiding Officer, your period is not unclean. It is not embarrassing. Madam Presiding Officer, a study carried out by Caribbean Coalition for Maternal and Reproductive Healthcare and Sustainable TT showed that more non-organic and unsustainable products were being used rather than the aforementioned sustainable products. Top 3 reasons: they are hard to find in the country, you don't know about it, they don't know about it, or it is too costly. What does that spell? Period poverty, lack of availability, affordability, and education. Again, my solution: educate and subsidize. Menstruators work hard every week. We deserve a period party.
Member, your speaking time has expired.
Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to move that the speaking time for the member be extended by a further 2 minutes.
Honorable members, the question put is that additional speaking time of 2 minutes be given to the member so that she can finish her speech. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say nay. The ayes have it. Member, you may continue.
Thank you. One member seems scared. Now, finding the right period products requires being able to change and have options. Having options and being able to know what you want to use requires trial and error. Trial and error requires money. There's no VAT on menstrual products right now in TNT, but yet a menstruator is expected to spend $125,000 and change on period products yearly. That's a Honda Vizzle. We can be driving out of here. Madam Presiding Officer, this is a call for business owners to buy and sell menstrual products as they do with KISS products, as they do with phone cards. This is a call for this administration, the workplaces, to provide sanitary product dispensers, not only free, but maybe at a reduced cost, maybe subsidy. Madam Presiding Officer, condoms are freely distributed on this island. Doesn't the absence of a condom make it likely that period products won't be used? Therefore, why shouldn't the distribution of these free condoms go hand in hand with the distribution of a free menstrual product? Madam Presiding Officer, as I close, we are worthy of a period party. And this involves education and subsidy. This involves caring for not just those who can afford it, but for those low-income families. We're worthy of a women's health party, and this must be prioritized. We must do more than just talk about it. By approving this motion, everyone has a responsibility and opportunity to contribute to the enhancement of women's health care. Thank you.
Assemblyman Emmanuel Trim, member for Monk St. George Goodwood, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. A pleasant morning to my colleagues and members of the public. Madam Presiding Officer, I seek leave at Standing Order 42.7 to read extracts from my speech.
Leave is granted.
Thank you. Madam Presiding Officer, this all-female administration should understand the broader implications of this motion. Proposing an initiative of this magnitude risks deepening Tobago's financial strain. We cannot effectively address period poverty without addressing poverty itself. As the minority leader stated, if some women and girls in Tobago cannot afford basic menstrual products, what else are they struggling with? Can they afford to pay their bills, feed their children, or maintain a decent standard of living? Tackling poverty at its core would create a far greater and more meaningful impact. Madam Presiding Officer, this motion is saying that we need to prioritize period poverty in Tobago, but proposing government-funded solutions to address it may not be the most effective or sustainable approach. Tobago's healthcare system already provides essential services, and what we need is not another costly action plan, but the utilization of existing resources. As the member for Belgarden Glamorgan clearly defined period poverty, but when a motion solely relies on providing free products or increasing subsidies, it treats the symptoms without addressing the underlying factors. Without educational outreach, we miss the opportunity to change long-standing perceptions about menstruation that discourage open discussion and healthy practices. Not only do women and girls lack awareness and are unprepared for their periods, but policymakers and adults with decision-making power in schools and workplaces also lack comprehensive menstrual education. Let me highlight some reasons as to why this motion is impractical. Many residents in Tobago still lack basic sanitation services such as private toilets and bathrooms in their own homes. While the focus is on providing free menstrual products, we must also prioritize significant improvements to sanitation facilities in our communities to ensure a comprehensive approach to public health. Menstrual hygiene management is closely linked to the availability of clean water and sanitation facilities. Let us improve these facilities within our schools and communities. Sustainable Development Goal number 6 stresses, and I quote, access to clean water and sanitation is critical for public health. So let's improve these facilities, because even free menstrual products won't be as effective because some women and girls may lack a safe environment to use and dispose of them. Tobago already have contraception access, yes, through our healthcare system and family planning initiative, but rather than creating new programs...
You have 2 minutes of speaking time remaining.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Why not allocate our existing resources to strengthen our existing services? Who will fund these extensive programs? Will it mean cuts to other critical healthcare services, such as maternal and mental health programs? An increase in subsidy means higher taxes. Are we really prepared to strain our hard-working citizens by increasing subsidies just to satisfy the demand of one specific group, especially when these funds could be better allocated to benefit our entire community? When we distribute free menstrual products, we undermine local businesses and stifle entrepreneurship. By providing these products free of charge, we risk discouraging private sector investment and innovation in the production and distribution of affordable menstrual products. Instead of fostering a dependency on government subsidies, we should encourage market-driven solutions that empower local industries and drive sustainable economic growth. Madam Presiding Officer, let us consider this. Suppose we claim to eradicate period poverty by distributing free menstrual products throughout the island, a scenario that is unfeasible. What comes next? Are we then expected to hand out free money to those less fortunate? This motion, by implying such measures, risks reducing the dignity of women and fostering a dependency that undermines empowerment. Once free products become the norm, where does it end? Free money, free food, or perhaps free travel? Such a slippery slope challenges our commitment to self-reliance and responsible governance. I am concerned that such initiative may be more about political symbolism than genuine evidence-based improvement. My intelligently challenged colleagues on the other side are pushing for a high-visibility program to win public favor, even when the underlying need could be better addressed.
Member, your speaking time has expired.
Extended by a further 2 minutes so that the member can complete her presentation.
Honorable members, the question put is that additional speaking time of 2 minutes be given to the member so that she can finish her presentation. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. Member, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Access to menstrual products for women and girls in Tobago is undeniably important. However, this motion presents a costly, unnecessary expansion of government intervention. Instead of reinventing the wheel, we should focus on strengthening existing healthcare surrounding period poverty, ensuring efficiency, and promoting personal responsibility. Let's improve what we have instead of launching an expensive and impractical new initiative. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Assemblyman Gabriela Sukla, you can now join the debate.
Good morning, Madam Presiding Officer, members of this esteemed House, and members of the media present. I extend my warmest greetings and wish everyone a happy belated International Women's Day. Madam Presiding Officer, I seek leave at Standing Order 42.7 to read extracts from my presentation.
Leave is granted.
I stand before you all today in full support of the motion under the theme, Her Health, Her Right, Closing the Gaps in Healthcare for Women and Girls in Tobago. This is not merely a question of policy. It is a matter of economic progress and fundamental human rights. Madam Speaker, the state of women's healthcare in Tobago is not just a health issue.
I am a presiding officer, not a speaker.
Madam Presiding Officer, my apologies. Madam Presiding Officer, the state of women's health care in Tobago is not just a health issue, it is an economic one. The access to menstrual products and reproductive care to women and girls in the country can be improved. According to research conducted by the NGO Crown Her Trinidad and Tobago, 76% of women in Trinidad and Tobago found period products to be unaffordable. This is not 20%, this is not 50%, this is 76%. This is more than half of the women in Trinidad and Tobago. This statistic is not just alarming, it underscores the daily struggle of thousands of women and girls in our country. Access to menstrual products is a fundamental necessity, yet, for many, it remains a financial burden. However, solutions do exist, as my colleagues on the opposition would understand. Investments in sustainable menstrual products such as cloth pads distributed by providers such as Lily Pads and NGC Greens offer a cost-effective and eco-friendly alternative. Partnering with these local organizations instead of relying solely on imported goods not only benefits consumers financially, but also stimulate growth within our communities. By supporting local production, we create jobs, encourage innovation, and reduce our dependency on external markets. So you might ask yourself, why should the government become involved with these groups that are already established? Well, this will help us ensure that there is quality in the provision of these things and ensures the longevity of these organizations. Because they do not work and win. They need money and finances to help promote these initiatives that they are building. So therefore, I think that they would need the government support. Madam Presiding Officer, this issue is closely tied to the UN.
Member, Minority Council, that is not acceptable. Member, you may continue.
Madam Presiding Officer, this issue is closely tied to the UN Sustainable Development Goal 8, promoting sustained, inclusive, and sustainable growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. Women make up 47.73% of the labor force in Trinidad and Tobago, according to reports from World Trading Economics. Yet, many women and girls are forced to miss work and school due to challenges associated with their menstrual cycles. When we provide free or subsidized menstrual products, we ensure that no girl has to choose between her education and her dignity. When we expand maternal and mental health resources, we are safeguarding not just individual lives, but entire communities. Madam Presiding Officer, the misconception that investment requires some excessive government spending must be addressed. The truth is, We already have resources in place at our disposals, utilizing village councils, district offices.
Member, you have 2 minutes of speaking time remaining.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Utilizing village councils, district offices, and even workplaces as hubs for public education on period poverty and reproductive health can drive change without significant additional cost. For example, there are health caravans already put in place by the Ministry of Health. Madam Presiding Officer, this is not a charity. This is a strategy. When women have access to health care, they can contribute meaningfully to society. They raise healthier children, build stronger businesses, and are given the opportunity to operate in their fullest potential. Tobago's future depends on our willingness to act today. The motion before us calls for the creation of a comprehensive women's health action plan and a decisive step towards ensuring women and girls in Tobago have equitable access to health care. By strengthening rural healthcare services, expanding postpartum and maternal care, and increasing accessibility to reproductive health resources, we are not just closing gaps. We are opening doors to opportunities, empowerment, and economic independence. I thank you.
Assemblyman Senority Charles, member for Plymouth Blackrock, you may now join the debate.
Madam Presiding Officer, esteemed colleagues and those in the gallery, good morning. Madam Presiding Officer, I seek leave on Standing Order 42-7 to read extracts from my speech.
Leave is granted.
I stand before you today not just as a community representative, but as a young woman who experiences the same monthly struggles that women in Tobago face. I rise to express my opposition to this motion, her health, her right, closing the gaps in healthcare for women and girls in Tobago. While the intention behind this motion is commendable, I must respectfully oppose it because it overlooks the financial sustainability for such a proposal in our current economic climate. Let me be clear, Madam Presiding Officer. Free or subsidized menstrual products for all women, while well-intentioned, is not a sustainable solution in our current situation. The THA is already stretched thin, and the funds required for such a program could result in higher taxes or divert resources from critical sectors like education, infrastructure, and public safety. Trinidad and Tobago has a luxury that many countries do not have: free health care. This is something we should not take for granted. While other countries may subsidize menstrual products, their people will still have to pay for healthcare services. We are in a fortunate position, but we must remain cautious of overextending ourselves. Imagine a woman gets charged for stealing over 990 worth of groceries from a supermarket, yes, right in Trinidad. And I'm almost certain that menstrual health products was a part of it. Is this really where we have reached now? As Assemblyman Green said in an opening statement, pads ain't a one-size-fits-all. So why the majority dare sweet-talking the women of Tobago with old talk wrapped up in fancy words, action plan? Member on the other side says, let's go to a menstrual party because women deserve to party. But member, women need balance too. I agree that period products are a necessity and not a luxury, but addressing poverty requires more than just providing one product. Women and girls in poverty need to access education, job opportunities, and healthcare system that truly supports them in a holistic way. Furthermore, expanding healthcare services for women requires more than substantial funding and infrastructure. Many of our local healthcare facilities are struggling to provide basic services, let alone expand for specialized care for women. A 2015 report highlighted tremendous shortage of skilled medical staff, particularly doctors and nurses, in the public health center. Additionally, the Global Health Index in 2021 assessed Trinidad and Tobago's health capacity in clinics, hospitals, and community care centers, scoring 48.5 out of 100, which is relatively low. And how do we expect?
Member, you have 2 minutes of speaking time remaining.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. So how do we expect to expand our services effectively if we can't even maintain our current ones? Lastly, I acknowledge the importance of mental health. These challenges affect both men and women in Trinidad and Tobago. We cannot focus on one gender-specific solutions without addressing the broader mental crisis affecting our entire population. In conclusion, Madam Presiding Officer, while I recognize that women's health must be a priority, the measures proposed in this motion are neither sustainable nor practical. Instead, we must focus on long-term comprehensive reforms that several citizens, regardless of gender, can access. Let us invest in education, infrastructure, and a better healthcare system that is accessible to everyone. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Assemblyman Bree Powder, member for Signal Hill Patience Hill, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, honorable colleagues, members of the public, residents of my constituency, Signal Hill Patience Hill, good morning. Madam Presiding Officer, before I begin my presentation, I seek leave as per Standing Order 42.7 to read extracts of my speech.
Leave is granted.
Thank you. I take a moment to recognize International Women's Day, a day to celebrate achievements, resilience, and contributions of women in our society. It is also a time to reflect on the work still needed to ensure equality, empowerment, and opportunity for all. It is a privilege to stand before you today in this august house. I am sincerely grateful for the opportunity to be here and to contribute to important discussions in shaping our future. With that said, I rise today to respectfully express my concerns regarding the proposal for the government to provide free or subsidized menstrual products across Tobago. Let me begin by affirming that menstrual health is an important issue, one that deserves attention, awareness, and support. I recognize the intent of this proposal. However, placing full financial burden on the government is an unreasonable approach. Madam Presiding Officer, as a responsible governing body, we must ensure that our fiscal policies reflect both compassion and prudence. Providing free or subsidized menstrual products would require a substantial and recurring financial commitment. With existing demands on our national budget, including healthcare, education, infrastructure, and social services, such an expense would place an additional strain on government resources. I must also address the blatant disrespect of this motion and, by extension, of my colleagues. Rallying for the government to provide free or subsidized menstrual products is not only unreasonable, but it is demeaning and debilitating to hear as a woman. I ask my colleagues on the other side to put themselves in the shoes of the very women they are defending here today. Would you gratefully and humbly accept a hamper of menstrual products as a donation on behalf of your nation's government when you know to yourself as soon as you reach home there is nothing on the table for you to eat? Some mothers struggle daily to provide for their families. I urge you to take a deeper look into society and observe what is taking place around us. Hardcore News on Facebook, for example, showcases the reality of many women on the island.
These women are terrified of their struggles being spotlighted because of the harsh criticism of the public eye. How can we prioritize just one need when so many women are suffering in multiple ways? If we are truly committed to uplifting women, we must adopt a holistic approach, one that ensures all necessities are accessible, not just menstrual products. Providing only one form of aid is an incomplete solution that disregards the full scope of economic hardship that these women face. As Assemblyman Trim would have highlighted, free pads do not pay rent. Free pads don't buy food. Free pads don't facilitate a woman's right to an education, which is exactly what every single one of us around this horseshoe is fighting for this morning: women's rights. This motion generalizes period poverty as the root issue, when it is in fact poverty and inequality amongst women in Tobago. Rather than placing the burden solely on the government and encouraging persons to live on grants and donations, we must focus on policies that empower individuals and families to be able to access affordable menstrual products and comfortable lives on their own accord. Encouraging local businesses to offer competitive pricing, promoting financial literacy.
Member, Chief Secretary.
Madam Presiding Officer, I stand on a point of clarification. I'm listening to the minority speak, and honestly, I'm getting aggravated because my speech alone has addressed most of the issues that they are spewing about. And I think they are confused because this motion calls for action, yet they are against it. So, Madam Presiding Officer, is it that they need to go back to the drawing board and decide where they want to put their minds at? Or do you recommend medical care for them? Because clearly something's wrong.
Member, you may continue your speech.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Member, you have stated in your speech that this motion is the first step. Please do not misconstrue the position of the minority. We recognize that it is a first step. What we are questioning is the consistency. Will it move past first step? As I continue, encouraging local businesses to offer competitive pricing, promoting financial literacy to help households budget for essential needs, and raising menstrual health awareness in schools are much more viable approaches. Expecting the state to fund and distribute personal hygiene products while excluding partnerships and private sector entities or community groups is extremely arbitrary. In many other areas of public welfare, we acknowledge the need for collaboration. Why should this issue be any different? If the government assumes full responsibility for providing menstrual products, what precedent does this set? We must be cautious in determining which necessities fall within the scope of the government. Moreover, implementing and managing such a program would require administrative oversight, distribution networks, and regulatory enforcement, introducing further costs and inefficiencies on our government, and by extension, our taxpayers.
Member,
Claire,
you have 2 minutes of speaking time remaining.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Without clear accountability and sustainable funding, this initiative risks becoming an economic strain rather than a solution. Madam Presiding Officer, the role of the government is to create an environment where essential products are accessible, not to assume responsibility of purchasing them for the entire population and encouraging struggling and poverty-riddled citizens. I have listened to my colleagues stress that both poverty and period poverty can be addressed concurrently, or in their words, you can walk and chew at the same time. I am here to caution you that you will choke. Take care to not bite off more that you can chew. I am yet to see this administration put into action one plan, let alone two simultaneously. As I conclude, menstrual health awareness is critical, and I fully support initiatives that educate, empower, and provide targeted assistance where needed. However, a plan that places entire financial and logistical responsibility on the government without considering partnerships or individual responsibility is simply not sustainable. We must foster a culture of self-reliance rather than dependency on government provisions. I thank you.
Councillor G.L. Charles, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, and a happy belated International Women's Day to all members of this Assembly. Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to seek leave at Standing Order 42.7 to read extracts of my presentation.
Leave is granted.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Honorable members of this Assembly, esteemed colleagues and valued citizens, I stand before you today not just to highlight an urgent issue, but to push for real, actionable change, the elimination of period poverty in Trinidad and Tobago. We have heard the concerns of the minority, concerns about funding, sustainability, and whether alternative, possibly more gender-neutral approaches would be of greater aid. But I have also heard something else, excuses. Excuses as to why we should delay action, why they believe this motion is just empty words instead of real change. Well, let me be clear. This motion is not about talk. It is about solutions. And it's ironic, isn't it? The same people calling this a talk shop have never brought this issue forward themselves. Instead, they commend us for raising an important topic and then, in the same breath, list every excuse under the sun for why it shouldn't be addressed now or by us. Sounds like a confused crew that needs to make up their minds. Prioritizing period poverty is not a drain on resources. It's an investment. The minority claims that we cannot afford this initiative, that our budget is already stretched. But let's get it right. We have chosen to prioritize women's health, just as we choose to allocate funds for roads, security, and other critical areas. Just as a hungry child needs food, a girl who cannot afford menstrual products needs them too. And this is not just about dignity, it's about economic sense. When girls miss school due to lack of menstrual products, their academic performance suffers and their future earning potential decreases. Educated women strengthen the economy, and healthier women reduce the burden on the healthcare system. Employers also benefit as menstrual health education leads to less absenteeism in the workplace. So while the minority clings to their "we can't afford it" argument, I ask, can we really afford to ignore it? And let's talk about sustainability. Some argue that even if this program gets funding, it won't be consistent. But that's why proper policy planning is key. By integrating menstrual product distribution into existing schools, clinics, and community centers, we ensure access without needing an entirely new infrastructure. Public-private partnerships can also help ease financial burdens.
Member, you have 2 minutes of speaking time remaining.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. This motion is not calling for reckless spending. It is calling for a smart, phased approach that guarantees long-term impact. We can address period poverty and poverty at the same time. Another argument made is that we should address poverty first, but let's call that what it really is, an admission of myopia. That kind of short-sightedness is a confession that multitasking is not their strong suit. Poverty is a deep-rooted issue that requires long-term strategies. But does that mean we should do nothing in the meantime? Does that mean the young girl who stays home from school every month because she has no pads should wait years for a solution while we figure out poverty? The very reason we are pushing for free and subsidized menstrual products, for increased menstrual health education, and for better access to services is because these are practical, immediate steps we can take to uplift women within the broader fight against poverty. A gender-neutral approach ignores the unique challenges women face. Some argue that instead of prioritizing women's health, we should focus on broader improvements that benefit all underserved populations. But let's be clear, a one-size-fits-all approach does not work when addressing gender-specific needs. Menstruation is not optional. It is a biological reality that affects a huge portion of the population for a significant part of their lives. Ignoring period poverty in favor of alternative policies disproportionately harms women and girls by failing to address their specific challenges. And equity does not mean treating everyone the same. It means ensuring everyone gets what they need to thrive. Just as we allocate funds for maternal care because pregnancy presents unique medical needs, we must allocate resources to menstrual...
Your speaking time has expired.
An additional 2 minutes be given to the member to finish her presentation.
Honorable members, the question put is that additional speaking time be given to the member of 2 minutes so that she can finish her speech. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say nay. The ayes have it. Member, you may continue.
We must allocate resources to menstrual health because period poverty prevents unique barriers to education, employment, and well-being. The time for action is now. This assembly has a responsibility to act, not just acknowledge the issue, but implement real solutions. We can no longer allow financial excuses, fears of sustainability, or misguided notions of neutrality to prevent us from addressing period poverty head-on. We have chosen to make women's health a priority, and we stand by that choice. This motion is not just about giving out pads. It's about dignity, equality, and opportunity. It's about ensuring that no girl misses school because of something beyond her control. It's about making healthcare truly accessible for all women. And it's about building a future where no woman in Tobago is forced to suffer in silence. To those still hesitating, I say this: either stand with us in progress or step aside and watch it happen without you. Thank you.
Assemblyman Chanel Felix, member for Buku-Mount Pleasant, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I first want to extend my greetings to the members of my constituents, Buku-Mount Pleasant, for their continued trust and confidence in my leadership to lead without fear, favor, and ill will. Madam Presiding Officer, I rise today with unwavering conviction that no woman born a woman or of a woman can confidently sit in this House and dismiss this motion for simply opposing sake. However, Madam Presiding Officer, what we on the minority bench refuse to support is an administration that brings a motion of such substance simply as a part of their empty political rhetoric of talk, talk, and more talk. No, I heard the member indicating that we know that it is good because we said that, we support the fact that they brought the motion and we should have brought it ourselves. Now, the reason why we are congratulating them on bringing this motion is because oftentimes you find them bringing self-serving political motions that have nothing to do with the true interests of the people of Tobago. Let's be clear. Addressing period poverty requires more than lip service. It requires action. Not an administration that has continued to spend the taxpayers' dollars on a number of action plans after action plans after action plans with no actions. Removing the stigma from menstruation and ensuring access to female menstrual products is not just a social issue. It is a fundamental right. And we heard the colleagues opposite talking about what happens in Scotland and their ability to give out free period products in public spaces. But what does that look like for us here in Tobago with all limited resources? Madam Presiding Officer, when it comes to greater education as it relates to menstruation, we on the minority bench fully support the type of education that goes deep into the communities and allow for words like period, pads, tampons, panty liners to no longer be shrouded in discomfort, so that men feel comfortable walking into the grocery stores buying pads for their daughters and for their wives, and so that women like myself no longer feel ashamed when we have that unexpected occurrence of our periods coming when we least expect it. But Madam Presiding Officer, what we on this side refuse to support is an administration that waltzes into these chambers with ChatGPT regurgitated speeches, plagiarized, and disconnected from the true realities of the people of Tobago.
Member, you have 2 minutes. Member, you have 2 minutes of speaking time remaining.
Madam Presiding Officer, we do not support a motion that pulls and tugs on the heartstrings of Tobagonians only to create another overpriced committee to pay their political lackeys right before election. Madam Presiding Officer, any action plan that truly represents the ideals and the ideologies.
Chief Secretary.
Madam Presiding Officer, I rise on standing order 45-5. The member is imputing improper motives. We are not self-serving, and you cannot accuse us of plagiarism. Is that what your secret is? Is that what you used?
Member, you may continue your speech.
As we continue with serious business and not parties here in the People's House, Madam Presiding Officer, any action plan that truly reflects the greater development of the women of Tobago would include the perspectives of professional women from all socio-economic backgrounds and political backgrounds. What this administration is suggesting is a political group of their core followers who would write an action plan that reflects what they want them to say. We believe that any action plan that is truly for progress would include the opinions of women that we here on the majority side will recommend. We believed we should also have a say. We should also be able to recommend women to sit on that committee. We believe that such action plans should be data-driven and not a bunch of generic statements. We believe that it should be inclusive, considering the needs of all Tobagonian women from all socio-economic backgrounds. And unlike what the Chief Secretary would have said.
Member, your speaking time has expired.
Madam Presiding Officer, I beg that the member has an additional 2 minutes of speaking time so that they can continue their presentation.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that additional speaking time be given so that the member can finish her presentation. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say nay. The ayes have it. Member, you may continue.
Madam Presiding Officer, this action plan should be practical in its resource allocation, leveraging both public and private partnerships, proper and substantial NGO collaborations, and community engagement for long-term viability. Yet in their presentations, I've heard the Chief Secretary stating that they are unable to fully place their confidence in NGOs, and this is why they have to take such an approach of putting so much of Tobagonians' money into this. Now, again, this is the micromanaging of this administration. Why not empower these groups to do what it is that they have already started? They have not proposed any creative solutions, such as utilizing local creatives to have campaigns such as women need pads just as men need toilet paper. Nothing like that. Not even a single mention of the practical way that this can be inputted into the THA budget by adding a line item under sanitation. Madam Presiding Officer, it is clear that this administration is void of ideas. No wonder they have not come up with any innovative solutions, such as partnering with private or small businesses to have vending machines that offer mini-size versions of these products at an affordable cost at these public spaces. Instead, they want to take all the money and give people pad for free. Innovation is needed. Critical thinking is needed. And Madam Presiding Officer, as I close, I stand at a moral crossroad. Because although I sit here on the minority, I sit here representing the people of Buku Mount Pleasant, and they are my first priority. Though I want to support this motion because its intention is good, I cannot sit here and endorse performative politics when this administration refuses to take into consideration the key recommendations made by this minority. Thank you, Madam President.
Assemblyman Zoba Samuel, member for Canaan Bonaccord Crumpoint, you may now join the debate.
Good morning, Madam Presiding Officer, honorable members of the House. I seek leave to stand on Order 42.7.
Leave is granted.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I want to start with my goodly colleague, the minority leader, who mentioned a monthly hamper drive. Hope I got it correct. And I believe that is what they are describing our intent, or interest rather, to raise the awareness and solve this underrated women's menstrual health issue, which can lower other plaguing issues such as cervical cancer, just to name the biggest elephant in the room. I know and I can see clearly that you're very good with statistics. So I'm going to ask kindly in your own spare time that you can look up the statistics on polycystic ovarian syndrome affecting women in Trinidad and Tobago, especially Tobago, and cervical cancer. And then you may be able to see how many women are being affected by these plaguing health issues due to a lack of menstrual health awareness and support. I want to further continue by agreeing with you when you say the term horrid birds. But I want to further correct you there. I don't say we are horrid birds. I would say we are Team Flash. We are speeding to secure our women's health, thereby reducing all the plaguing issues and health risk that affect women on a daily basis that many don't speak about. These risks that they pass on also to their children, because they say from the womb toward the tomb. So when you nurture them in the womb and they're born into the world, they are birthed into the world, they come into the world with whatever genetics the parents would have instilled into them. We are further speeding to remove all those illegal pharmaceuticals that are entering our country that are creating more harm than good. I didn't hear the minorities speaking on that. And I want to call some citations forward. In January 9, 2023, there was a media release by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service speaking about a quantity of pharmaceuticals with a street value of $91,200, which was seized after being illegally imported. Can we imagine any of those products being women healthcare products and women using those products that were not approved for shelf? What harm that would have done to us more than good? Further citation, 17th of May 2024, 24 pharmacies, not 1, not 5, not 10, 24 pharmacies within Trinidad and Tobago were under probe according to the Ministry of Health for unregistered drugs. Issues that the minority did not bring to the table, however, they are discrediting.
Member, there are no cell phones allowed around this August chamber. Please, you are cautioned.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. All of these are issues that are burning hot, that I have not heard the minority mention. However, they are discrediting our intent, our interest in raising women's health, which would also, by large, tackle these issues that are affecting everyone's health.
Member, you have 2 minutes remaining of speaking time.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officers, we are willing to burn out our shoe sole once it means we can raise the awareness amongst parents and guardians to treat with young girls differently in comparison to boy children. I'm certain many persons in the House today can attest that they have lifted more than one bucket of water from one destination to the next. They have jumped from high spaces from one elevated platform to the next. They have done strenuous tasks, which puts a strain on women's ovaries, which puts a strain on our womb, and which leads to the greatest elephant in the room, which speaks to infertility due to lack of proper menstrual care. The minority highlighted financial support for single women and low-income homes. But isn't that also a hamper drive and handout? There are so many citizens refusing to work because they expect a handout. What we are discussing is menstrual health, which affects all women. There are many of those low-income homes that are actually living better than many who are working because of handouts. So are you asking us to facilitate a lazy society by supporting persons who are expecting a handout as opposed to dealing with a serious health risk? I beg to question. Assemblyman for Plymouth Blackrock, my question to you is, let's say your menstrual cycle starts immediately at this moment. What would take priority, an education lesson or a stay free?
Assemblyman, your speaking time has expired.
I beg to move that an additional 2 minutes be given to the member to finish her presentation.
Honorable members, the question put is that additional speaking time be given to the member for her to finish her speech. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say nay. The ayes have it. Member, you may continue.
I want to further quote the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection's vision, which is an innovative, responsive, well-respected institution ensuring the delivery of holistic, high-quality, stress high-quality, client-centered health and social services to the people of Tobago. How can we do such if we do not take the first step to provide the basic necessities for women who are in need on their menstruation? Doesn't it begin somewhere? The minority continues to question feasibility, funding, but let me ask, do we not know that one cocoa does full basket? If we start by providing for those who are less fortunate with sanitary napkins, stay-free tampons, all the basics for young women, for teenagers, wouldn't it mean that we've already started this road of solving poverty? Or are we to all sit, as you are accusing us of doing, and just have idle banter in the House with no real solution? Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Assemblyman Coris Archer Koshinansis, member for Bethel Newgrange, you may now join the debate.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, and a pleasant afternoon to you, the esteemed members of this Assembly and the viewing public here in this House and online. It is a profound privilege for me to join this special International Women's Day debate, but before I proceed with my contribution, Madam Presiding Officer, I seek leave as of Standing Order 42-7.
Leave is granted.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I stand this afternoon not only as the proud representative of and for the constituents of Bethel Newgrange, but as a long-standing champion and advocate for period poverty and women's health awareness. You see, I have lived the misinformation aspect of period poverty, and it severely impacted my formative years. Unfortunately, the cultural misconception that period pain is a normal thing and a rite of passage for girls and women caused me to suffer in silence for years, until a diagnosis at the age of 20. So as a living testimony whose experience birthed Fibroid Awareness TT, a national advocacy and awareness foundation, and as a living testimony who has raised the funds and volunteered time and resources going into schools and communities, it truly pains my heart to have had to endure this morning's incessant ramblings from those on the other side. I listened keenly to their attempts to discredit this motion and our efforts as a government for all sorts of reasons. And I have come to the conclusion that wisdom does not reside on the other side. It seems as though confusion instead has entrenched itself as a strongman, and they are now the very weapons formed against themselves and women and girls of Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, those opposite all stood in this House and either claimed or professed support for women and girls. Some even commended the motion and its intent. Yet from those very lips, they expounded excuse after excuse, including wanting equal pay and not hampers, as I heard earlier. I have to agree with Councillor James. They appear to be a very confused bunch. I caution the minority. The Holy Word admonishes that blessing and cursing ought not to come from the same lips. And you see, those who claim that they have not seen a single plan, they need to get an ophthalmologist quick. Blindness is near. So, you know, let me get into debunking some of the things they put forward this morning, because it really was just a continuous strain of a painful melody about a lack of finances and the need to address broader issues first. right?
Member, you have 2 minutes of speaking time remaining.
Thank you. So the minority is against this motion on the premise that broader issues must be first addressed. This is actually their admission that they can't juggle two things at the same time. This is them saying that one cannot use a fully functional bathroom because the kitchen leaks in some way. To those opposite, I encourage you to look up the word multitasking. If you're not capable, stay on the side. Madam Presiding Officer, another argument they parroted is that resources are limited. So we can't afford this, and we should not simply provide free products. This is not a motion about pads. It's a holistic motion. They conveniently and willfully ignored the subsidy portion of the motion and all the other aspects that address the myriad issues at hand, and then have the audacity to call for meaningful and a comprehensive plan. To the minority, you see the word comprehensive? Leave it alone. You should spend some time with the word comprehension. Now to my colleague, Councillor Charles, she properly rubbished their main points, right? I just want to join her by saying we have chosen to prioritize this matter. And because of our prudent management of the limited resources and our ability to engage in key partnerships as a responsible government, it will be a success. To us on this side, we believe that our women and girls are worth it. This is not just a hamper drive. This is a worthwhile investment in education, healthcare, and the vulnerable in our society. What it is not is about the creation of some paid committee the member from Buku, Mount Pleasant, falsely alluded to.
Assemblyman, your speaking time has expired.
Madam Presiding Officer, I seek leave to give the member 2 minutes of additional speaking time.
Yes, she falsely accused.
Member, I understand your enthusiasm. However, I am on my feet. Honorable members, the question put is that additional speaking time be given to allow the member 2 minutes speaking time to continue her speech. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say nay. The ayes have it. Member, you may continue.
My apologies, and thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. So yes, she falsely alluded to some paid committee. To the minority, please be advised that the THA has qualified officers in public health, project design, and management, among other knowledge and skill set. They understand the need for internal and external collaborations at every level. They are the co-architects and co-leaders of this initiative. So when you think you're attacking us, you're really attacking the qualified women and men who have done the preliminary work and who will ensure the success of every phase of transforming women's healthcare in Tobago. The feasibility was explored, and to those erroneously accusing us of having no data, no Tobago data, listen. Fibroid TT has engaged in research across secondary schools from its pilot project. More than 50% of over 200 high school girls did not believe they had enough information about reproductive health. And the same applied when asked if they had ever been spoken to in detail about menstruation. So the evidence does exist. This is not just about politics. Madam Presiding Officer, our motion is clear. It acknowledges the gaps. It addresses the now via the proposed action plan and also considers the medium to long term via strong advocacy. Those on the other side would have you believe that this motion was only about prioritizing period products. As I said earlier, they need to leave the word comprehensive alone and focus on comprehension. Because they have also erroneously assumed that the THA would singularly carry the financial burden of the actions that we set out to accomplish. What is truly unfortunate is that those opposite have chosen to stand on the wrong side of history. What is before us is clear. We can move forward with real solutions, clear interventions, and commitment to change, or we can continue with the lame excuses, contradictions, and illogical arguments. I know where I stand. Colleagues, do you know where you stand? We stand for action, we stand for progress, and we stand with the women, girls, and people of Tobago. So let's stop playing politics with women's health and vote in favor of this motion. I thank you.
Assistant Secretary for Health, Wellness and Social Protection, you may now wrap up the debate.
Officer, as somebody who is in love with theater and in love with the arts, I give the minority 10 across the board. That was a performance. It is quite interesting to see how the minority scrambles to find things wrong with this motion, knowing that deep down inside they agree with it. Madam Presiding Officer, as our minority councillor, Ms. Rennie McPherson, pointed out, there's really and truly no government funding when it comes to period poverty within our schools, which is the whole point of the motion, that we as a THA need to address these gaps that are visible, which probably unknowingly to the minority councillor was confirmed. To the member of Signal Hill, Patience Hill, who said that we cannot walk and chew at the same time and that perhaps we may choke. It seems to me like you are protruding your own insecurities and failures on an administration that has done more than you would ever imagine to do while in office. If you do not believe it cannot be done, I recommend that you sit down, sit back, and watch us do it. Now, one of the key arguments that was raised by the minority is the lack of funding. Really and truly, we're really on a tight budget. Nobody is denying that. But I have but one question. Whose fault is that? This is not ours. I suggest that you all try to fix that. Madam Presiding Officer, allow me to clarify and reaffirm our position as an administration that period poverty is in fact an issue that we need to deal with. Our administration has learned how to take little and make it last and give the best that we can. That is an administrative miracle. We stretch every dollar and deliver to the people. And that includes our women and girls, who are the heart and soul of our society. Without them, there's no future. So the investment is worth it. As the Chief Secretary rightfully said during her presentation, I think that listening skills are something that is important. So I would suggest, as they say in primary school, cross your hands and put your fingers on your lip and listen. Because as the Chief Secretary said, we are not here to take Tobagonians' money. That is a fallacy and that is a lie. What we are here to do, as she rightfully said, is to seek international assistance to get the aid that we need to treat this issue that is prevalent in Tobago society. By law. By law, correct. Now, I want to touch on one more point, because if I want to go on, it might be too long. Member for Lambo Lowlands, Jada Abraham, raised that we are following other countries. We are follow fashions. The minority has no vision. Perhaps if this was a priority to you, we would not be in this August chamber here today to discuss whether or not women and girls in Tobago deserve access to free menstrual products. If it means looking at other models out there that allow women and girls to lead lives with dignity and pride, I do not mind ripping a page out of that book to implement that here within our society. That is our way of prioritizing the empowerment of our women and girls. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Thank you, Madam President.
Honorable members, the question put is, whereas International Women's Day highlights the right to quality healthcare for all women and girls, Whereas gaps persist in Tobago's healthcare services, particularly in menstrual health, maternal care, reproductive health, mental health, and accessibilities, whereas challenges such as period poverty, inadequate postpartum support, limited contraception access, insufficient mental health resources hinder women's well-being, and be it resolved that this Assembly acknowledges the urgency of addressing these gaps and commit to advocating for policies that prioritize women's health. Be it further resolved that this Assembly agrees to the creation of a comprehensive women's health action plan to provide free or subsidized menstrual products, strengthen menstrual health care education, expand postpartum and maternal health care services, improved access to contraception and sexual health services, increase mental health resources for women and girls, and strengthen rural healthcare infrastructure to ensure equitable access. And be it further resolved that this Assembly reaffirms its commitment to making women's health care a priority in Tobago. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried.
Motion for adjournment.
Assistant Secretary for Health.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. I beg to move that this House stands adjourned to date to be fixed.
Honorable members, the question put is that this House stands adjourned for a date to be fixed. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say nay. No. The ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.
برحمتنا وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. ربنا وابعث فيهم رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياتك ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة